14,000 years ago, in what's now Bonn Oberkassel, Germany, archaeologists uncovered a grave of a man, a woman, and their dog buried side by side. It was the first undeniable proof that wolves had crossed the line from deadly rivals to trusted companions. But the trail did not start there. In Siberia's Altai Mountains, another dog-shaped canid, more than 33,000 years old, tells the same story. For tens of thousands of years before these finds, humans and wolves shadowed each other across the frozen steppes of Ice Age Eurasia, fighting over the same herds and sometimes the same kills. They were competitors who saw each other as threats, yet somehow this rivalry transformed into the most powerful alliance in prehistory, where wolves became man's best friend, and it changed humanity's destiny forever. The relationship began with blood. For 400,000 years, humans and wolves stalked the same herds across the windswept plains of Eurasia. Archaeological sites from Boxgrove in England to Zhoukoudian in China reveal wolf bones scattered among early hominid remains, evidence of two apex predators locked in an evolutionary arms race for survival. Both species had evolved remarkably similar strategies. Humans formed cooperative hunting bands that could coordinate complex attacks on large prey. Wolves, on the other hand, developed pack behaviors that allowed them to bring down animals far larger than themselves. Each group possessed intelligence and the ruthless efficiency necessary to dominate its environment. However, there was not enough room for both. When human hunting parties tracked wounded mammoth calves across the tundra, wolf packs followed the same blood trails. When humans established temporary camps near seasonal migration routes, wolves patrolled the same corridors for easy kills. The two species developed an intimate knowledge of each other's capabilities as threats to be eliminated or avoided. Environmental pressures intensified this rivalry. Climate fluctuations during the Pleistocene created periods when prey became scarce, forcing both species into increasingly desperate competition for dwindling resources. Humans possessed tools and fire, giving them advantages in certain situations. Wolves had superior speed, endurance, and sensory capabilities that made them formidable rivals. Neither species could afford to ignore the other's presence. Yet this very competition set the stage for an unexpected transformation. Both humans and wolves faced the same unforgiving reality. Survival alone was getting harder. Prey animals were not only larger, but also faster and more dangerous to bring down. Rival predators from cave lions to saber-toothed cats stalked the same hunting grounds, and shifting climates made food supplies unpredictable and winters harsher. In this environment, neither species could rely purely on its own strengths. Wolves had speed, endurance, and senses far keener than any humans, but they lacked the tools to strike from a distance. Humans had fire, weapons, and complex strategies, but their senses and stamina were limited compared to their four-legged rivals. After thousands of years of hostility, both were about to discover that cooperation could unlock advantages neither could ever achieve alone. The first breach in the ancient hostility came through necessity rather than affection. Some wolves began following human hunting parties at a careful distance, learning that these bipedal rivals often leave behind scraps that provided easier meals than the exhausting work of bringing down prey themselves. These early scavengers took enormous risks. Approaching human camps meant entering territory where they could just as easily become the hunted as the hunters. For humans, the sudden presence of wolves near their camp created a dangerous paradox. These predators posed a direct threat to children, the elderly, and anyone caught alone. A single wolf could kill a person, and a pack could overwhelm even the best prepared small band of humans. The instinctive response was to drive them off with spears, fire, and coordinated attacks. But humans soon noticed something they had never expected from their unwelcome visitors. The wolves that lingered at the edge of the camps displayed a remarkable sensitivity to danger. Their ears pricked at sounds far beyond human hearing. Their hackles rose at scents that hinted of predators, or even rival human groups, long before people themselves could detect them. In effect, these scavenger wolves had become unintentional sentries, living alarm systems for the very people they were stealing from. This presented humans with a complicated choice. Tolerating wolves near the camp meant accepting the constant possibility of attack. Children and food stores had to be guarded at all times, and the psychological burden of living beside predators was immense. Yet the advantages were undeniable. Groups that learned to endure the presence of these animals gained a critical edge in survival. When threats approached, wolves sounded the alarm, buying precious moments for defense or escape. Yet the benefits became increasingly difficult to ignore. Human groups that maintained these uneasy relationships with scavenger wolves found themselves with a warning of threats that caught other groups completely off guard. When rival human bands or dangerous predators approached, the wolves' alertness bought precious time for preparation and defense. The question facing early humans was whether they could find a way to preserve these advantages while minimizing the risks. The solution required a level of behavioral sophistication that would have been impossible for most species. Humans began developing criteria for distinguishing between potentially cooperative wolves and those that posed immediate threats. They learned to read wolf body language, recognizing the difference between submission and aggression, between nervous scavenging and predatory stalking. This knowledge would prove crucial as the relationship evolved from reluctant tolerance toward active partnership. Humans discovered that certain wolves exhibited traits that made them more suitable for coexistence. Some showed reduced flight responses when approaching human camps, suggesting temperaments that could adapt to prolonged human presence. Others displayed submissive postures that indicated they would not challenge the authority structures of a human group. Most importantly, some wolves demonstrated an unusual attentiveness to human gestures and movements, an early capacity to read intentions and respond to signals. The wolves that survived this gradual selection process were less aggressive and increasingly cooperative in ways that went beyond scavenging. These early wolf dogs began participating in human hunting strategies, using their superior senses to locate prey that humans might otherwise miss. They learned to help drive animals toward ambush sites, or keep weakened prey occupied until hunters could close in for the kill. The survival of these early alliances depended on both species finding ways to communicate across the boundary between them. Humans developed consistent signals, gestures, sounds, and later deliberate vocal cues that wolves could learn to interpret. Kind of like a prehistoric Caesar Milan. In turn, wolves began reading human body language and intentions in ways that allowed coordinated movement during hunts and other tasks. This rudimentary interspecies communication became the foundation for deeper domestication. Most critically, humans came to understand that partnership demanded active shaping rather than passive tolerance. Cooperative behavior had to be encouraged through reward, while aggression was curtailed through clear and consistent responses that wolves could grasp. This required patience and discipline as humans balanced their own safety with the long-term goal of fostering dependable wolf allies. Yet even these promising partnerships were fragile, often on the edge of breaking down into hostility. Wolves retained their predatory instincts, and tensions could flare when food was scarce or when social hierarchies clashed between wolf pack instincts and human leadership. Human groups had to remain watchful, ready to cull or drive away animals that reverted to dangerous behavior. The breakthrough came when humans realized they could actively shape wolf behavior rather than simply selecting from existing traits. By capturing and raising wolf pups within human groups, early people could influence their development from the earliest stages of life. This marked a fundamental shift from passive selection toward the first steps of true domestication. Archaeological evidence suggests that this transition was underway by the end of the last ice age. The famous double burial at Bonn Oberkassel in Germany, dating to about 14,200 years ago, contained a domesticated dog genetically distinct from wolves, demonstrating that domestication had already taken hold in some human communities. Other sites in Eurasia, including regions of Siberia, show similar evidence of early dogs by 14 to 15,000 years ago, though the precise geographic origin of domestication is still debated. What is clear is that human groups across harsh northern environments found immense value in experimenting with wolf-human partnerships. Raising wolf pups within human camps allowed for unprecedented behavioral modification. These young animals imprinted on humans, learning social cues from infancy, to read gestures and body language, to respond to vocal calls, and to recognize emotional states. Unlike wild wolves, they came to accept human authority within the social hierarchy, while preserving their natural tracking and hunting skills. Yet even these early dogs still carried strong traces of their wild ancestry. They were larger and more aggressive than most modern breeds, with powerful prey drives and less predictable temperaments. Human groups were forced to develop management strategies like reward systems, discipline, and careful culling to keep their valuable allies from becoming liabilities. The domestication process also revealed a deeper mutual transformation. Humans developed new social and cognitive skills to manage relationships with non-human partners, while dogs underwent evolutionary changes that adapted them to human environments. Their digestive systems shifted to better process starchy human foods, their body size and cranial shape gradually diverged from wolves, and their vocalizations evolved toward forms that facilitated communication with people. However, the success of these early partnerships introduced a new challenge: maintaining the alliance across migrations. As groups pushed through Ice Age landscapes in search of prey or settlement areas, they had to ensure their canine companions could endure the same brutal conditions. This required careful resource allocation and disciplined pack management under extreme stress. This investment paid off as humans entered new territories with a formidable advantage of loyal hunting partners, unlike anything else in the animal world. Siberia's extreme environment served as the ultimate testing ground for human-dog partnerships. The bitter cold of the late Pleistocene, months of near-total darkness, and vast distances between resources created survival challenges that neither species could manage effectively alone. Success required seamless coordination between human intelligence and canine capabilities, with little margin for miscommunication or failure. The dogs that emerged from this crucible developed skills far beyond those of their wild wolf ancestors or the earliest domesticates. Genetic studies suggest that dogs may have diverged from wolves as early as 20 to 23,000 years ago, with some of the earliest evidence of domesticated dogs found at sites like Elisevichi in western Russia and Zhukov Island in Siberia. These early dogs possessed skills where they could travel in snowstorms, sniff out animals hidden under layers of snow, follow tracks across frozen ground, and stay alert during long nights when humans grew tired. People in Siberia learned how to use these abilities in clever hunting strategies. Dogs would find and track animals, while humans used tools and teamwork to finish the hunt. Together, they could bring down reindeer and elk, large prey that would have been far harder to hunt alone. Earlier in the Ice Age, humans hunted mammoths, and while dogs may not have been directly used in these hunts, the skills developed in Siberia were part of the same survival tradition. But life in the Arctic was never easy. Food was often scarce, which meant humans and dogs sometimes had to compete for the same meat. The long darkness and bitter cold also made both humans and dogs stressed and harder to control. Cooperation was most needed at the very times when it was hardest to keep. The most resilient human groups developed clear strategies for preserving the alliance. Archaeological evidence from Zhukov Island shows deliberate provisioning of dogs, with cut marks on reindeer and polar bear bones suggesting that food was rationed to sustain canine health. These people also devised shelter arrangements that protected both species, keeping dogs close enough to integrate them into daily survival while maintaining the discipline needed to prevent conflict. The Siberian experiment became the model for human-dog relationships that spread globally. As humans migrated out of Eurasia into Europe, the Americas, and eventually the Pacific, they brought with them both their canine companions and the hard-earned knowledge of managing these partnerships. Genetic evidence strongly parallels this story. Dog lineages trace the same routes as human migration, showing that by this point, dogs were no longer optional allies, but had become integral to human survival strategies. The fully developed human-dog partnership created hunting capabilities that transformed early human society. With canine allies, large game animals that had once been too dangerous or difficult to capture became more accessible. Dogs could track and harass prey, exhausting or cornering animals, while humans moved in with weapons and coordinated tactics. This teamwork gave human groups a reliable way to secure high-calorie food sources that would have been out of reach without canine assistance. The nutritional benefits rippled outward into every part of human life. Access to steady supplies of meat and fat supported larger populations, allowed groups to claim and hold bigger territories, and freed some members to specialize in activities beyond day-to-day survival. Archaeological evidence suggests that dog-owning groups expanded more widely, with genetic studies showing dog lineages closely mirroring human migration routes across Eurasia and, eventually, into the Americas. Partnerships with dogs created a competitive edge, giving these groups advantages over rivals who lacked such allies. But success created new challenges that threatened to undermine the partnerships that had made it possible. Larger human populations required more resources, putting pressure on both hunting territories and the food supplies needed to maintain healthy dog populations. The coordination required to manage multi-species hunting groups became more complex as the scale of human society increased. Human groups also discovered that their hunting success attracted unwanted attention from rival groups that lacked similar capabilities. The advantages provided by dog partnerships made these groups valuable targets for conflict, as control of successful hunting territories and the dogs themselves became prizes worth fighting for. This created pressure to develop new strategies for protecting both human communities and their canine partners. Over time, this revolution in hunting capability began to reshape the relationship between humans and their environment. Highly efficient human-dog teams placed greater pressure on prey populations, and archaeological records show patterns of overhunting that sometimes forced groups to migrate when local herds declined. What began as a partnership for survival was turning humans into more active shapers of ecosystems, able not only to adapt to their surroundings, but to alter them in lasting or devastating ways. The human-dog alliance ultimately produced advantages that went far beyond hunting and protection. The skills needed to maintain productive partnerships with another species helped shape more advanced forms of human social organization. Groups that learned to manage complex relationships with dogs developed stronger communication, cooperation, and leadership abilities that later proved just as valuable in interactions between humans themselves. The partnership taught humans to think systematically about long-term relationships based on mutual benefit rather than immediate dominance. Managing dogs required understanding their needs, motivations, and behavioral patterns in ways that prepared humans for the complex social negotiations necessary for larger, more sophisticated societies. The empathy and cooperative behaviors fostered by human-dog relationships may have contributed directly to the development of the social complexity that characterizes human civilization. Dogs may also have served as bridges between human groups. Shared dog breeding and training practices could help create common ground between communities that might otherwise be hostile. For example, genetic studies suggest that early dog lineages spread alongside human migrations into Europe and the Americas around 15 to 12,000 years ago, showing that dogs were carried across long distances and likely played roles in trade, exchange, and alliances. The care and selective breeding of dogs marked humanity's first real experiment in animal husbandry, centuries before sheep, goats, and cattle were domesticated during the agricultural revolution around 10,000 years ago in the Fertile Crescent. Most significantly, the human-dog partnership marked the first time humans fundamentally reshaped their relationship with the natural world. Instead of merely adapting to their environment, people actively altered another species to meet their needs. This breakthrough paved the way for agriculture, the domestication of livestock, and eventually the rise of permanent settlements and complex civilizations. In this sense, the first successful domestication of dogs set the template for the great transformations of the Neolithic era. Dogs also gained powerful symbolic and cultural significance. They appear in ancient burials and art across many regions. A dog carefully buried alongside humans at Uyun al-Hammam in Jordan about 11,500 years ago. Rock art depictions of dogs aiding in hunts in Saudi Arabia, at least 8,000 years old, and mythological roles in early civilizations, from Anubis in Egypt to the dogs guarding the underworld in Greco-Roman and Central Asian traditions. These portrayals reveal how deeply dogs had entered human identity, embodying loyalty, protection, and companionship, long after their survival role was no longer central. But this success also marked a turning point. The advantages gained through the alliance allowed human groups to grow in number, expand into new territories, and eventually dominate ecosystems worldwide. The relationship that had once been mutual and balanced gradually shifted toward human control. By the Bronze Age, specialized dog breeds were already being developed for warfare, herding, and guarding, clear signs that what began as a survival partnership had become a relationship of mastery. The wolves that first approached human camps 40,000 years ago could never have predicted that their decision to scavenge leftover kills would fundamentally alter the trajectory of life on Earth. That prehistoric gamble on cooperation over competition gave birth to a partnership that enabled human civilization itself. Today, as we share our homes with the descendants of those ancient wolves, we carry forward the legacy of the most successful interspecies alliance in history. A reminder that our greatest achievements often emerge from our willingness to trust former enemies and discover mutual benefit where we once saw only threat.